Hello, everyone. Welcome and good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. My name is Robin Brooks, and I am a senior product manager here at 280 Group. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we have a fantastic Ask Me Anything discussion on thriving as a woman in product management. If you're not familiar with 280 Group, we've been in business for over 20 years, and our mission is to empower product professionals with knowledge and tools to build products that matter. We've seen many of the challenges that women in product management face. So today you'll hear some great lessons and experiences from our guest panelists. So we hope you continue to join these conversations as our panelists have a wealth of knowledge and experience to share. I also encourage you to check out many of our free resources available at 280group.com. We will paste the link to that in the chat in the moment, but you'll also find a link to download our ebook, Trailblazing Women in Product Management. This ebook spotlights the relatable and motivating examples of women in product management leadership roles. Okay, now let's get over to how to submit your live questions during this Ask Me Anything webinar. So please type your questions into the chat box and I will invite you to unmute yourself and ask your question live if you're comfortable with that. If not, I'll be happy to just read the question for you, but we would love it if you did share with the question with yourself, with our panelists, to keep this more conversational. Many of you have already submitted questions ahead of the event, and our panelists will be answering these questions live as well. So why don't we go ahead and meet some of our panelists here. Okay. So I'll ask each panelist to introduce themselves, tell us why you're passionate about this topic, and how you've worked during your career to thrive as a woman in product management. So Rosa, why don't we start with you today?
Hi, Robin. Thank you for having me here. I am Rosa Welton. I lead a team of product managers at ServiceNow, and we're really focused on the digital experience. What I'm excited about is really reaching more people and meeting kind of the questions with my experience and shedding some more human light on how I came to be where I am now. I love the label of thriving that you apply to me. Mm-hmm. Thank you. It doesn't feel like that every day, and I want to be open with folks about that, the good and the bad today.
Thank you. I think many of us feel the same way, but it's a little aspirational, but also something we're hoping to make a reality too. So, Nicole, how about you?
Hi there. Yeah, that was resonating with me, Rosa and Robin, as you were talking about that. So I'm Nicole Daines. I have 12 years of product experience, and I'm currently leading product at a place called Rosie. We do grocery e-commerce. I'm passionate about this topic for a few reasons. I think that there isn't enough conversation or elevation around, women thriving, first thriving in product, but thriving as a woman in product. I like to talk about the emotional side of the work on Twitter, and I'm also currently standing up a product mentoring program also on Twitter. And so I'm just passionate about helping people thrive in their careers generally and navigate kind of what the emotional side of it is, and be able to help them move forward.
Great, thank you. And Padmasree, will you please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself as well?
Of course. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Padmasree Kannadi. I am the VP of Product at Tableau, which is a part of Salesforce, essentially helping our customers migrate their analytics solutions over to the cloud. I think that product management is a really difficult job because I think somewhat building on what Nicole was saying, it's a really intense combination of IQ and EQ. It's actually a discipline that I think is very hard to learn. But you don't go to school necessarily, which is why I think organizations like 280 Group exist. And so it's an ever-evolving discipline that has different manifestations in different jobs and different verticals and industries. And so importance in learning product management itself is true. And then when you apply the additional aspect of really needing to lean in and to sort of establish yourself as a leader in an organization that women and underrepresented minorities might have, it just complicates the challenge further. And so, I've made it my mission as well, along with the other panelists, to really try and enable more folks to find their way with this fantastic profession. So excited to be here.
Great. Thank you all so much for joining. Looking forward to a lively discussion. All right, so before we start answering the questions, we would really like to know where all of our participants currently are in their PM journey. So we will be launching a poll here momentarily, and looking forward to seeing where everybody is. Okay, let's see. There we are.
I'm seeing more of a feedback question, not the tenure question.
Same here.
Uh-oh, yeah, let's see here if I can find, where is the, nope, I don't see the correct question here. Ah, here we go. We had some technical difficulties with Zoom this morning. Please bear with us. Okay, we'll give a few more seconds here. All right. Let's see. Let's go ahead and take a look at the results. It looks like we have quite a few seasoned product professionals on the call here. So that's great. That's going to help inform our discussion today. Yeah, with that, let's go ahead and dive in. All right, I am going to stop sharing here and bring this into more of a live discussion format. So what I'd like to do is start with a few questions that we had come in ahead of the webinar, and the first one I think is one that is pretty broadly applicable to lots of us, and I'm going to open this up to all of our panelists. And that is, what would you describe as maybe the top 1 or 2 challenges for women product managers? Anyone want to dive in, or should I call on someone?
I can start. And
okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. And I reflect on what I have worked on and continue to work on, as well as from coaching others. And I think the 2 big things are visibility and kind of networking, for lack of a better word. And for visibility, I'm referring to making sure that all your good work is visible to the people around you, the people making decisions about what your next role might be. And it's I know for me, I grew up in a family where, quiet kids are good kids. And so it's really, I have to kind of reframe how I think about visibility in a positive way. And so that's one thing. The other I think about is kind of lifting your head up and looking around. Networking gets a bad rap, but really it's about building relationships so that you can get help, you can help others. And really, I heard this recently, success in leadership, it's not a solo sport, it's a team effort. And so it's part of what you do is building a team around you.
Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm in Indianapolis. I would say that same thing about visibility, but just a little different tweak on it is when you're really flexing your EQ and trying to mentor others who are newer in the position or let your team shine, like that's a big focus. And so it's hard then for those successes to be seen as your successes because you're focused on everyone else getting sort of the credit.
I think that's such a salient point, right? I know that as a woman, I was more conditioned to work in the background and try to help everybody be successful. And it is a little bit difficult sometimes to kind of just raise our hand and say, this is my work. This is I was responsible for this portion of this. And yes, I think we are all by nature, product management is a team sport, right? But it is fair to call that out and say, look, this is important.
Yeah. One other thing I might add as well, sort of switching gears a little bit, is that product management is such a vast discipline, like in terms of the surface area that it covers, starting from market analysis and strategy, and then moving on to setting roadmaps and plans and execution, and then managing your stakeholders. It's such a broad swath of things that I think women tend to be more of this. Someone like me, I'll speak for myself, being a perfectionist, I wanted to cover all of those areas really well all the time. And that's actually a really hard thing to do. So it's important for you to sort of understand in your organization, how is product management defined? What are some strengths that you are trying to bring to the table, as well as areas that you're trying to grow in, and really manage your time well so that you can set the right expectations, not kill yourself, and also be able to execute really well in those particular areas and evolve in your discipline and in your craft. And I found that to be really, really challenging in the early years of my career as a product manager.
Wow, such a great point. And I kind of want to put a pin in that is for to expound on that a little bit more. I think, maybe we as, I not to be too generalizing this too much, but we tend to maybe starting a new job, we might think, gosh, we have to learn all of the things before we start to network and start to work with stakeholders, et cetera. And so that actually doesn't set us up for success. We think maybe we're socialized with, all right, growing up, we have to have A+ on papers. And in order to get an A+ on my paper, I need to be heads down, kind of to Rose's point too, around just trying to, get the knowledge that I need to get, and then I'll work on stakeholder management. But then what I've learned as I've grown in my career is actually beneficial if you do it the opposite way. If you work on your relationship building and you learn through that, it's so much more important in product, especially as you grow, to work on relationships and have a solid rapport with everyone. It's not about the frameworks and the hard skills. Those are important, but more important is that relationship building.
Absolutely. Relationships are key. I know we talk about soft skills versus hard skills, but I think for product managers, soft skills are the hard skills in kind of every way that you can interpret that. So it's very, very true. Yeah, definitely resonating with me as well based on my experience. Okay, let me dive into the next question here. So pivoting a little bit, what would you think about kind of the key product management skills that are really important to have on a resume as we're trying to progress our careers? And I believe, Padmashri, you wanted to maybe take a stab at this one as well.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if you step back, I'll probably start by distilling product management a little bit, and then maybe talking about the skills and competencies. And then, if you can start to demonstrate what that looks like in your experience, that can really set you up for success. I mean, at the end of the day, for me, product management boils down to this, right? Who is the customer? What problem are you trying to solve for them? How well can you solve that problem? And how can you drive business impact from it? Right? So ask yourself, I know there are folks who are interested maybe early in their career. For a lot of you, you're mid-career. if the triangulation of those three things is really, really interesting to you, then you probably have the DNA marker to be a good product manager. And then building on that, I would say some of the core things that folks are looking for when I'm looking to hire a team and such, they're the results areas, right? The ability to go do good market analysis, the ability to go build a great roadmap, the ability to present and manage, your leadership, the ability to execute and to do strong stakeholder communications. And then there are the how you do it. There's the what and the how. Again, going back to what Nicole was saying earlier too. The how you do it around, having an agile mindset, being a really strong communicator, both listener and speaker, being, strong in the way you drive decision making, things like that. So the combination of those two are sort of what we're looking for in a good product manager. The ability to then start to transpose some of those into your experiences. So from your past experience, let's say you were a software engineer, but you really had that problem solving mindset and that strategic thinking mindset. Elevate a project where you actually did that, where you can articulate what those outcomes looked like, what results you drove for the business, how you solved the customer's problems, and things like that. And then start to elevate those into more articulate outcomes in your resume. And then that can start to become helpful for you to be able to speak of a product manager. I'm sure others have some really good suggestions as well.
Yeah, and I can weigh in, and I like the distinction in the question between what you're showing in the resume versus what you might demonstrate in an interview. Mm-hmm. And for me, in a resume, I look for the storytelling on what change did this person affect? What was the kind of the initial state to end state, to Padmishree's point about results? And the more I can suss out what their role was and how that applies to the problems I'm trying to solve, that's a better match. The other piece is showing, I like to hire unconventional candidates. So showing breadth of exposure to different industries, different roles, that kind of curiosity that may lead someone to try something different is a plus for me. And then in the interview itself, I'm really looking for, can I see this curiosity and problem solving, and here are the concrete ways that they've made that happen that led to the results they're describing in the resume. But yeah, that's a great, you do have to think about both parts of your storytelling, right? The in-person and the on paper.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah, so on a resume, just to kind of add on to that, yeah, I am looking for the results that you're generating. Ideally, you have some numbers in there that you can say, all right, you can speak to then when you do talk in the interview. And then in the interview, ideally, you're kind of able to give us, maybe you're following that STAR format, situation, task, and then the A and the R, action and result, and which is an easy framework to try to follow, but you have a few stories that you can really help you bring some of those results to life in a concise way. Are you able to pull out the key parts of what you did and share that story in that way and demonstrate strategic thinking?
Those are all really good points. And I have, I think, a great follow-up question here. Okay, so you had the perfect things on your resume, you aced the interview, and now you got the job. And how do you fight imposter syndrome? Something that I know that I faced, especially early in my career, but it's just something that keeps happening, right?
I'd love to kick us off on this one here. I feel like every product manager I've talked to has had imposter syndrome, no matter where they are kind of on their career journey, where they're just starting out or even at, some higher levels, and even evaluating, do I still like this career? And is this the right thing for me? But usually if there's some kind of feeling like that that's coming up, I like to examine that and interrogate that within myself. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling triggered? And kind of evaluating that and saying, all right, well, is it because I feel like I'm not prepared? Or is it because, right? Is it because I feel like, I don't know something that I think I should know. And so from there, you can kind of figure out like kind of approach it as a problem you would solve. It's like, oh, well, if I feel like I don't know something, am I the person that is supposed to know this thing? Or can I just delegate that or find the person that I need to invite to the meeting? Like once you get to the problem kind of behind of what you're feeling, then I feel like you can kind of approach it from a left brain point of view and really try to problem solve around that. And then once you have an action plan, I found that really helps to be able to unblock yourself and move forward at least. And then you try the new things or you bring people in and then it starts to feel better and better. And then imposter syndrome kind of gets like more and more on the back burner.
I'm on week 3 at Tableau, and I'm going through exactly what you're talking about right now. Why did this smart group of people hire me? What? So it's most certainly real at every stage of one's career, and probably more for folks who are underrepresented in a particular space, such as women in product management. A couple of tactical strategies that I'd build on top of what Nicole was just talking about. One, lean into that discomfort and to that imposter syndrome, because one of the strongest things that comes out of that is actually better preparation. So if there are aspects where you feel like you don't belong or you're not prepared or you're not ready, go do the work, because that will make you that much smarter in the room and that will make you that much more equipped in the room. And that's a strong way to sort of overcome that piece. And there are going to be some unrealistic aspects of the imposter syndrome, right? Literally, I'm in week 3 and I'm like, why haven't I solved these problems? That's because I'm on week 3 and it's okay for those problems to not have been solved. And some of those are just, to your point, Nicole, like looking at yourself, examining, talking yourself off the ledge and things like that. So that can be helpful. And then the one quick last thing I'll also add is really establish your relationship with your manager, right? Set the right expectations, align on the expectations that they have as well. Okay, this is what I think I'm going to get done in my first 30 days. This is what I think I'm going to go do next. Are you aligned? Right? And if they give you that positive feedback and you're on the same page, guess what? You're on the right track. Trust that and then keep working forward. Don't just get into your own echo chamber. Or when you do, try to get out of it as much as you can.
I think it's really important too that normally when you're feeling that, it's because you need more information, and the best way to network then is to try to find those people who have the information. They're the knowledge experts. You need them to help you. You need to help them. And if you see it as part of your networking, is figuring out how to solve that and the person to go to, you accomplish both those things at once, getting yourself more prepared and increasing your network.
Yeah, those are all really great points. I think product management is such an interesting discipline, as we all kind of touched on, right? That you can come into product management from kind of anywhere, right? There are paths into product management, but it's not as straight a line as it is in some other disciplines. So I think this is something that we could all feel from time to time, no matter where we've come from. And these are great tips for kind of how do you manage it? Solve it like you would solve any other product problem. I love that as an approach, right? Be problem solution focused. Okay, so we've gotten the job, we've battled through imposter syndrome. And so now why don't we take a look at, kind of some of the, recommended ways to help get executive buy-in. This is not just a problem that product managers face, right? We have maybe some layers of complexity here. But when you are standing in front of a room of intimidating people, this is something that can require, a little bit of extra skill. So what would you recommend?
Hi. Well, I seek them out, opportunities for areas that are ambiguous, unfunded, unloved, and being able to tell the story about them so that I can turn them around and bring success. I think back to in the most recent experience where there was a general sense that something needed to be done, but a lot of question marks after that. What helped me was really coming pulling together a story on based on the customer voice, what we were hearing, and really kind of painting a picture of the long-term implications of not taking action, and then coloring in the pieces with what the steps were at different levels of investment, frankly, because that was the question on the table. And it was framed in a way that the executives could understand it. Here's the problem. Here's what we're asking for. Here's what the positive and negative outcomes are for different actions you can take. So I think I'd abstract that to think about your audience, think about what matters to them, and then rally all your product manager magic on the customer, the experience, and the work that you're putting in, and how you'll measure success to convince and sway the audience.
Yeah, those are great points. I would build on that as well and add a couple more. One, typically the work that you're doing, whether it's a project, an initiative, a roadmap item, whatever that may be, ensure that it's part of the core strategy for the company, right? A lot of times you may be off in a corner doing a certain thing that isn't necessarily tied to the strategy of the company. So make sure that that connection exists, and that you're spending time and energy on something that's meaningful to the leadership at the top. It might sound sometimes like it's obvious, but make sure that it actually is a priority for the company. And then the second thing I would add on top of what Rosa was also talking about is build relationships with some of those executives outside of the context of your specific project or initiative. Maybe ask for a monthly one-on-one with that vice president of customer success or other parts of the leadership in the company. That way you'll also understand how they make decisions, how they think, how they like information being presented to them. Understand what the best practices are inside your company for how decisions are brought to leaders. Are they wanting fancy PowerPoint presentations? Are they very data-driven? Do they prefer the Amazon method of the 6-pager? I don't know what that mechanism is, and understand what that is. That way you're speaking their language. So if you know how they think, you know it's a priority, and you're also speaking the language that they like, then it's more likely that you're going to give them something that they can react to, get the feedback, and that way they also notice that you've done your homework. And when you eventually present your work, then the likelihood of success will be much higher.
Absolutely. Cannot understate the importance of speaking their language and also aligning to what they care about. And so perhaps they have budget items that, they have goals or numbers they need to hit for whatever reason. Try to get your hands on some of that information. And I think it would be illuminating to you to try to connect what you're working on in whatever capacity to those overall goals or objectives that they're focused on. And then you can start to connect the dots and say, hey, this thing is important. It's important because it will help move the needle here. And I've gone out and I've done the research. I've talked to the customers. I've looked at the data, et cetera. And here's the insight that I can bring that will help you achieve your goal. And by helping them achieve that goal, you're going to gain more buy-in. Probably over time, you can gain more scope, more trust, et cetera, by building that relationship proactively, delivering value.
Absolutely. Relationships are key, right? I mean, we are in the business of driving business outcomes at the end of the day, and that means solving problems. If we can solve valuable problems, then we're solving the right problems. Okay, I wanted to call out, Suma asked a great question in the chat. I'm happy to read it, but Suma, if you would like to unmute and read it yourself, you're welcome to.
Hey guys, sorry, I just had a quick question. What's your favorite parts of your job and what's the least favorite? And if you have a least favorite, how do you get plowed through it?
I have an answer, two answers to that. On the least favorite, it goes back to building a team. And there's some things that I am both not good at and also don't like that other people are good at and like doing. And so part of it is figuring out how, as a team, that work can get done. The other one, I found a time management through Pomodoro. I set 25-minute increments, and I just get it done. Close my eyes, get it done, and it makes the process go faster. Favorite parts, I would say, are those times when I've got a whiteboard marker in my hand and then exchanging ideas with people, and we're creating the future, creating a new reality. That's my favorite part of, frankly, going back to the office this year. And I like that part. And then afterward, figuring out, did we get it right in the room? What can we learn from what actually happened, and how do we pivot from that? Those are, I think, kind of the endpoints often of the product life cycle that I really enjoy.
That's awesome. I'll kind of build on some of that as well, and I'll start with my favorites. And so when I was an individual contributor, and now that I'm in a management role, I love that whole customer discovery process. Like, that's my jam. You know, being out there, like defining what problems it is, working with, and now in my role, I get to kind of empower my folks to do the same. It's like, what are the problems you're trying to solve, and provide that guidance around, all right, well, what are the myriad ways that you're going to go research and try to uncover this problem, and who are you going to talk to? And then hearing back about all of this information that they're learning, and then seeing their eyes light up about, oh, well, I learned this and this, you know, so I get great creative energy out of both doing that work myself as well as empowering my team to do that. And personally, and women or not women, product folks are supposed to be data informed, data driven, etc. I don't personally love, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, doing deep data analysis. I like to have the benefit of the information. So I want to hire for that and have someone like go at it, go to town on that. But personally, I don't love that and creating the charts and all sorts of stuff, even though that's totally needed for what we do.
For me, the most favorite part of it lately in particular has become setting strategy and understanding that, you know, there's strategy really at the end of the day is a discrete set of choices that the company is choosing to make. And it requires discipline to say it's not all of the above, it's A and B, it's not C and D for now. It's maybe we'll revisit C and D in 6 months, 12 months. I enjoy that work so much because at the end of the day, it aligns company goals with the direction the product needs to take with execution. And it becomes so much easier to drive alignment on the ground if you have strategic alignment at the top. So I've spent a lot of time lately just sort of gravitating towards that. Least favorite, gosh, even at a place like Tableau, we don't have data, to your point, Nicole. Like sometimes it's just really hard to have the data that you are looking for to be able to tell the story and to drive the decisions that you need. And you want to come out looking like a rock star with like the best possible insights that drive the decisions. Sometimes it's just really like pulling teeth trying to get to the data, and that can be frustrating. And we're always going to be in a place where there's never enough data, right? I mean, there's plenty of it, but is it actually insightful in the way you're trying to drive decisions? In this conversation is always, there's never enough time to get that much done, and that can sometimes be frustrating. I find that frustrating.
Yeah, even if you have data, does the data tell the story that you need it to tell? And you may be missing pieces. I definitely have been in that experience. I think we all have. Okay, so let me pull up a couple more questions here.
And Robin, there was a question in the chat around specific to Padmashree's point. How do you get to that understanding of the type of communication and presentation that has good traction with your audience? I'll answer maybe Padmashree.
Great.
I'd say a lot of it is understanding what is working at the company, and that comes from observation and conversations. If you see an outcome that you also want, try to understand what was behind it. What was it, a nice prototype that took the day? I've seen that happen. Or was it some other more data-driven model that really convinced people? So again, relationships and conversations around what you need will help.
Yeah, plus one to all that. One of the things that I think is truly undervalued in the workplace, and maybe I'm biased because I happen to love this stuff, is how work gets done. Study it in your company. How do decisions get made? Which executive seems to be wielding the decision-making ability? Which executive is operating more on instinct versus on data? I mean, it doesn't have to be either or, but how do they operate? How do decisions flow through inside the company? Do you have a separate VP of strategy? Do you have a chief of staff to the CEO who seems to be, just understand what the landscape is. There's no right or wrong answer. The more you understand the operating system of the company, the more you're going to understand what is the vehicle, how are presentations made, and observe, right? I mean, you ask to see if you can shadow different executive meetings from time to time, ask for a shadowing opportunity. So that way, you know, besides those one-on-ones and those relationships that you might try to have, you may also see those folks in action in the dynamics in a room, in an executive session. Just ask to be a fly on the wall. Those can be really good ways for you to really observe and write down, again, like I said, how decisions get made, how documentation is presented, and who seems to be having what kinds of authority in a room. It's very much all about dynamics and people, and your observational skills, to Rosa's point, will really help you.
I must build on that too.
Oh, go ahead.
I was invited to a senior executive meeting where my VP presented, and I was the fly on the wall. And I just love that immediately after that meeting, she pulled me into her office and said, let's debrief. What did you see? What do you have questions on? Let me tell you what I saw. And then she said, here's what I know about these executives and why they said what they did. And that just so, she had no need to do that, but it felt like such an investment in me that I try to do it with my team. I call it, here's the crystal ball. How might this play out? And it's really training that, like you say, the operating system of how work gets done. It's another muscle like anything else.
Oh my gosh,
really
I'm totally going to do that now with my people going forward. I think that's such a great coaching opportunity. Plus one to all of those things, I'll add that, you know, when you're talking to kind of a higher level audience, you do want to know the details, but you may not want to communicate those details at such a detailed level. Try to make it simple. Simplify your language potentially. I mean, you would know your organization best, but if you can explain it in a way that just breaks it down, breaks all the complexity, makes it simple, and makes it engaging and compelling, that will kind of go a long way.
Absolutely. I have had to learn that same lesson. Have the data, have maybe a whole appendix full of charts and lists and data and graphs, right? But the main point that you're making is with a story. If you can go in and tell a story, that seems to have been successful for me in the past. Okay, so I've got a great follow-up question here. So let's say, okay, so we're following a career path, right? You've gotten the job, you've gotten into it, you're starting to get a handle on stakeholder management, you're having some success in your product, but you're starting to feel stuck in your career. And I think I know that I've been there in the past. How do you identify maybe what skills you need to improve, and using a mix of gaining more experiences, training, mentorship? How do you find how to move yourself forward in your career? And I think, Nicole, you had a good way to help with this.
Yeah, I have a few things on this, and definitely welcome Rosa and Padmashri to kind of add on. So it's helpful to know, you like recognize, all right, I feel stuck. I think a lot of people might kind of maybe languish and not really like come to terms with, all right, well, you know, there is a turning point right now, and I do need to kind of examine this with myself and figure out like what's going on. But we don't always know what our blind spots are. They're blind spots for a reason. And so if you have relationships with, you know, some of the other product folks, you know, if you have more, you know, product leaders in your company, then you can talk with them and try to understand and maybe use them as informal or formal mentors for yourself. You can also try to work with and network with product folks outside of your company. Product Twitter has been very helpful for me and many folks, kind of along those lines of just finding community. And it's helpful to know that there are so many other folks that are in the same spots and maybe trying to move their careers forward as well. And then perhaps consider a formal coaching program. So for me, I felt very stuck in my last role. I was misleveled. I wasn't really getting ahead there. They had organizational issues and that they were actively addressing through a reorg, but things were taking a long time. So personally, I went through a coaching program to help me get out of where I was and help me clarify what that next step was. It's where do I want to be? What do I want to say on my resume in 3 to 5 years that I'm doing actively at that time? And so with that clarity of vision and by understanding what my values were, okay, culture is important to me. I got to be able to have fun and enjoy the people I work with. I got to have like a little, I have to care about the value proposition of the company. You know, these are things that were important to me. You might have different things that are important to you, but if you sit down with yourself and try to understand what that is, then you can use that as a lens for when you're doing your next career search. Now, whether that is like at your current company and trying to move forward, or whether that's kind of looking elsewhere and networking, I would say that those are some great ways to get unstuck.
Yeah, and building on that 3 to 5 year vision, I think one of the things I personally have struggled with is going broad versus deep. I've been a generalist in different industries. I've done product management at different types of companies, which is awesome because I am able to sort of lend a really, like my pattern matching skills are strong and I can lend a really different set of perspectives into the organization I'm currently looking at. The downside is that I am no expert in any one vertical, right? So ask yourself the question, which one of those two do you want to pursue? Again, no wrong answer, right? Let's say you've had a couple of stints at a consumer companies, and then you've suddenly moved to B2B, and you might feel stuck because you're not able to tell which one of those identities you most associate with. So step back and think a little bit about what that narrative is for what you're looking for, where you see yourself 3 to 5 years from now. Be as specific as you can. Then that helps you understand, oh, I see, vis-a-vis where I want to be. These are the gaps I have. And, whether it's certification or mentorship or other sort of opportunities, you can go seek those out and then try to round out those capabilities so that you can get to where you want to go.
The one thing I'd add is my own experience with an accountability group. And it came out of a coaching group. But there's 4 of us now have calls every other week. And it's really valuable to keep ourselves accountable to what we want to do and to our values. Again, don't do it alone. It's very isolating to feel stuck. It could be embarrassing to say, I think I should be somewhere else that I'm not, and I haven't made that. Don't compare, just start where you are and move up, keep going.
I would reiterate having an accountability group. I have my every other Friday morning coffee with some peers, and we talk through these same things. It is absolutely invaluable. I highly recommend finding some like-minded peers, setting some goals, and talking about them. It really does help. I love that as a strategy. Okay. I saw in the chat, it wasn't so much a question, but Nancy raised a really good point that, not all of us are blessed with managers that are going to support us. And layered on top of that are unconscious gender biases. We know that they exist, right? We did have a question come in actually from a male product manager about what unconscious gender biases should product men and women be aware of, and how do you suggest that we help manage those? This is a tough one, right?
Yeah, I think it's important to, first of all, have an open conversation that equity in the workplace, inclusiveness in the workplace is a priority for everybody, not just you. So I would recommend, first of all, leveraging folks in your people team, resources that might exist in the company. While a lot of them might exist more as a checkbox, sadly, if you want to truly put that into practice, it's important to sort of pull those resources in and have an honest conversation and say, hey, you know what? We're a pretty diverse group. I want to make sure we're all getting better at this. I personally want to get better at this. Can we actually make, this a priority? And generally everybody will be on board, I would imagine, but that then creates the safety for you to be able to say, okay, next time I do something like X, Y, or Z, will you call me out? Right? You can all get some training together. You can all have a discussion together. You can create safety in the room to say, when we're in work settings and I do something that is unconsciously gendered in some way or biased in some way, will you please call me out? And I will do the same to you. You have to first create safety, and you have to make this a priority. You can't just randomly start doing it yourself. But if it is a priority for that team of people that regularly works together, then you can truly bring this to the surface and make it a priority. And kudos to you for bringing it up. We need more of that in the workplace.
We absolutely do. And I had a story a few years ago. I was in this meeting. There were two women. I joined last, and so there were a bunch of men sat around the conference room table, one woman. The men did not move when I came in. But the woman said, oh, why don't you take my seat? I'll just sit back. And I was like, what? No, I'm not going to take your seat. You stay at the table. And I made the men move over because there was room for everybody, but the men just didn't think about it for whatever reason. It was unconscious. They're just like, yeah, I'm just sitting here. I'm just about ready to start the meeting. But the woman had that in her mind of oh, I can't believe somebody else wouldn't get a seat. You can have mine. But there really is room for everyone. I think that there's, when you find moments like that, if you can bring it about in humorous ways, even lighten the situation and say, okay, well, let's not nominate, Nicole again to take notes because she's the woman, maybe volunteer to take notes. And I've had, as a woman, have had to kind of back away from some of these inclinations of, okay, I'm not going to be the note taker here. I will allow someone else to volunteer to do that, ideally a dude, or, things like that. And so if you can find little ways to kind of brighten things up ad hoc, that works too.
Yeah, not much to add, but really more about shed light on it, make it part of a conversation, and like many things, the more you talk about it, the more comfortable it gets, and you get to a shared vocabulary around it. And if you need it, find the group training or resources that Padmasree mentions.
Yeah, I would say in my experience, if you encounter something, don't hide it, don't bury it. Tell people how you feel. I've had, success pulling people to the side and say, hey, this made me uncomfortable. I think there might be something here that you're not aware of. I have had to do that with peers. I have had to do that with managers, even not my manager, which is an awkward conversation. But I think as we continue to push things forward, I would also recommend we all look out for things that don't necessarily just affect us, but somebody else in the room that may be feeling a different kind of bias than what we're accustomed to feel. Because again, as we move forward as organizations and we're all becoming more aware, that just helps everybody. So yeah, that's what I would say. Okay, I think we probably have time for one more question, and let's see here in the chat. Thought I saw a good one. Okay. All right. I think we are getting to a point where I have too many good questions and it's hard to decide. All right. Why don't we end with how to take some approaches and influence others so that we're all willing to adopt new ideas. This kind of cuts across, right? How do you manage stakeholders? How do you manage other individuals within the organization? Because we're not just selling our solutions to the very top, right? We have to implement. Even once you get that decision and you get everyone in the room aligned, how do you help basically manage change within an organization to move a product forward so that you have a successful product in the end?
I read this awesome book by Keith Ferrazzi. I listened to it. Called Leading Without Authority. And he talks about this process of co-elevation. So you're partnering with folks that seemingly might have just different goals or priorities, and you're sharing your goals, you're understanding theirs, and together, and this might be multiple stakeholders, but you're kind of figuring out how your initiatives or your goals might feed into each other. And then a rising tide kind of lifts all boats. And so you're able to achieve so much more and greater impact for a larger area of the organization by partnering with and understanding goals. So that's kind of like generally the framework. And then, specifically, you could tie that into maybe you have a product, initiative that you're trying to drive forward. It's got a goal or a measurable KPI. Maybe they have something similar, and you can figure out how to maybe help achieve both of those goals. So by having and switching to that mindset, I've stopped seeing other situations as conflicting to what I'm working on. It's usually additive. And it's like, oh, wow, by partnering, we can actually achieve more together. And who else can we enroll in on this? And let's borrow some other folks and get people motivated and excited. And then all of a sudden you have a work group that you can all work together and try to achieve these things. And it's way better than anything you could have done by yourself.
Yes, definitely. Challenging and rewarding, I think, is the outcome. And what I'll describe, when I joined this current team, they weren't used to having product managers there. And so a lot of what I did was, if you think about changing and influence how things were done, was to come in with this, product toolkit, but that didn't really hold value until I started to show, here's the value I can bring in terms of the customer voice and how that connects to the business goals and how we measure that. And so it was a lot of understanding where we were both trying to get. So the shared goals is important, but then understanding kind of how they might see this new person and new function coming in out of the blue. So that has helped me is in building that joint story. I like this concept, right? It something.
Co-elevate.
Co-elevating, yes, co-elevating to something bigger than the two of us to build toward that. Yeah, thanks, Nicole.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. I want to go ahead and make sure that we are wrapping up. So I'm going to share one final poll that may have got a sneak preview at earlier. So let's pull this up. And while that's running, I did want to invite folks to register for our upcoming webinars and continue gaining knowledge to advance in your PM career. Check out the webinars calendar to learn more. And we will also post a link in the chat. So thanks for everyone for sharing your thoughts. And for joining us today for this Ask Me Anything. Big thanks to our panelists. And don't forget to download the Trailblazing Women in Product Management ebook as well. Thanks, everyone.